So, today we're going to talk about another book, which is called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. Yes. I don't know, and I'm sorry, by the way. I don't know what this book is going to be all about. I've just only seen it in the health section of thebestbookbits.com, which, by the way, is a pretty great site. I do believe, though, that it is somehow a collection of summaries written by other book summary sites. So they are not original, I guess, but anyway, this is kind of what I'm doing as well. I'm not writing this, and I haven't been writing any summary at this point of time, or up to this point of time. So yeah, they are sharing it, I'm sharing things, so I'm actually fine with that. Sometimes the quality isn't that good, I do have to say, and there is some spelling mistakes, but yeah, still, you're getting some ideas of great books and amazing books and great ideas of great authors, which is an amazing thing, and that's for fucking free. So just nothing to complain about that. And by the way, with that being said, hello, welcome back to the next episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. If I haven't said it, because I tend to forget about that. And yeah, I think I'm just going to go ahead, and I do hope that the text is big enough. I've zoomed in a little bit. And once again, it is blocked there, unfortunately. But they also have a podcast, and they also have a YouTube video of that. So if you want to check it out, please check it out. The link to this article is going to be down in the description and also in the show notes if you are on the podcast. But yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and read, something that I'm sometimes able to do. But yeah, anyway, I do, by the way, hope that you're fine and everything is good. But yeah, The Biology of Belief by Bruce H. Lipton. Recent research in biology presents evidence that throughout the 20th century, the power of genes has been grossly overestimated. It appears that the environment and our perceptions are far more influential than previously thought. The Biology of Belief explains the fundamental difference between traditional biology and new biology, and how, based on these insights, practical and even spiritual conclusions can be drawn from modern research in the field. In this summary of the Biology of Belief by Bruce H. Lipton, you will discover what switches your genes on and off, why we should make peace, not war, and why we are made in the image of God or the universe. The Biology of Belief key idea number 1. Cooperation rather than competition should be the central tenet in our theory of evolution, just because, I still believe that we would have all died if we wouldn't feel bad when being bad people quite. There is a reason why we feel good when we're giving compliments. There is a reason why it feels good to be nice. There is a reason why it feels good to help other people, because I just really strongly believe that it was programmed into us. Because if we wouldn't have been just in tribes or bigger groups, or just, maybe even smaller groups, being on your own back in the days where there have been just saber-toothed tigers and fucking amazingly great animals in general, predators, we would have all died. And so I really strongly believe that this whole cooperation thing and this whole being social thing is programmed into us. Of course, there are some people that are not too social, and I do not necessarily want to say that they are just wrongly programmed. But it is, first of all, just how they are. And second of all, I don't know. Things change. And back in the days, a few million years ago. And so things obviously change and have changed. But yeah, let's see what they are talking about. Who discovered the idea of evolution? Charles Darwin? You might think so, but you would be wrong. It was actually discovered a few decades before Darwin by a French biologist named Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Yeah. Lamarck's idea of evolution, however, was slightly different than Darwin's. Unlike Darwin, who viewed evolution as a battle between species, Lamarck conceptualized evolution in kinder terms. To Lamarck, cooperation between species and individuals was extremely important to evolution. And unlike Darwin's theory, which describes random genetic mutations, some of which help an individual survive in the environment and in return encourage evolutionary progress, Lamarck suggested that species evolve as they learn to fit their surroundings, or to fit in their surroundings. And in many ways, Lamarck's view is closer to our current understanding of evolution. For example, when we look at how the immune system functions, we can see how organisms adapt to the environment or their environment and pass this knowledge on to their offspring. When a virus enters our body, our antibodies fight it. When antibodies are successful, they remember the virus and how to kill it. This memory is then passed on to the antibody's daughter cells. So I do therefore really quickly want to point out, so if you find yourself in certain places where your immune system has to be strong, I do believe that it also has to be strong. So what I'm aiming for is that maybe being overly concerned about your immune system and or about disinfecting everything and just being as clean as possible could actually lead to your immune system being not as good. I guess. Just a guess. When a virus enters your body, I've already read that, Lamarck's notion that organisms often cooperate rather than constantly fight can also be demonstrated by modern scientific research. And we are not just referring to members of the same species. There are many symbiotic relationships in nature where different species appear to cooperate with one another. But I do believe that they're doing it because they might be having the same goal. And I think they wouldn't be doing that if they wouldn't have the same goal. But I don't know. Or they wouldn't do it if they hadn't have the same goal or didn't have the same goal. Because to would is just incorrect apparently. For example, our digestive system contains billions of bacteria to help it function. Without these bacteria, we wouldn't be able to digest the food we eat. Furthermore, interspecies cooperation even affects genes, doesn't? Science has revealed that genes don't necessarily have to be passed on through reproduction from individual to individual, but they can be shared with members of other species. The following book summaries there are multiple ones, okay, will show how our understanding of the function of human cell biology confirms this Lamarckian idea of cooperation. The biology of belief, key ID number 2. The brain of a cell, which controls cell behavior, is not its nucleus, but its membrane. Lamarck's theory points to the importance of cooperation in biology. Let's explore this by looking at nature's remarkable survivor, the cell, whose functions are the rest of many elements working together. There is not a single function in our bodies, from digestion to working of our immune system, that can't be found in a single cell. Cells are incredibly smart and were among the first life forms on our planet. Yeah. The intelligence has enabled them to survive while the vast majority of creatures have died out. One example of their intelligence can be seen when individual cells are removed from the body and grown in a culture. When this happens, cells will actively seek out environments where they can survive and avoid environments that won't foster their growth. But where does this smartness come from and what guides cell behavior? Most people would probably guess that it comes from the cell's nucleus, where genetic information, the DNA, is kept in the form of chromosomes. However, if this were true, a cell should die as soon as its nucleus is removed. Yet, we know that when the nucleus is removed, a cell will continue to live and function as if it had a brain. This is because the nucleus of a cell is actually where reproduction takes place, rather than its brain. This is because the nucleus of a cell is actually where reproduction takes place. Rather than its brain, the nucleus is actually the cell's gonad or sexual organ. In fact, the cell's actual brain is more likely its membrane, which surrounds the outside of the cell. Inside the membrane, there are two types of proteins: receptor proteins and effector proteins, which react with the environment to trigger the action of the cell. These receptors pick up signals from the environment, and the effectors turn the signal into action. And so if I do assume, so these are my thoughts, by the way, sometimes it's actually pretty difficult to differentiate between my thoughts and the summary, so especially when you're listening to the whole thing. So I just really try to do a better job at that, I guess. But yeah, what I wanted to say is, if this cell or if the membrane or these proteins recognize that the environment is bad and is not good, which just totally makes sense because, it is willing to survive and it wants to survive, then they are going to initiate action. So, I don't know, for me in the end, I mean, we will see if it just is an important thing that it is not the nucleus or the core of the whole thing, but it is rather the membrane or the skin or however you want to refer to it. But yeah, inside this membrane, the biology of belief key ID 3. And I do hope that something is wrong there. I don't know what is wrong, but I have to maybe close some things there. Yes, I obviously have to. I'm very sorry for my dry throat, but it is what it is right now. I'm then gonna change it. Okay, so let's quit a few things and let's fuck you as well. I don't need you. Let's fuck you as well. Don't need you too. And no. Despite what some Darwinists believe, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that genes do not determine our development. Well, I don't know. I don't know the science behind that, but I do think that this has been a state of art or the common belief for quite some time. But we will see. In the previous book summaries, we have found that Darwin's theory of evolution is not always supported by science. Remarkably, even Darwin himself had doubts about his work. In a letter he wrote near the end of his life, he questions whether he had given enough consideration to the role of environmental factors in evolution. Turns out there are plenty of weak spots to be found in the evolutionary theories developed by Darwinian scientists. One such theory is genetic determinism, which centers on the belief that genes govern biology. More specifically, genes determine the production of proteins that form an organism's body. However, this theory fails to hold up in one area. If our biology is determined by our genes alone, then the human genome would need a gene for each protein, which would lead to a minimum of 120,000 genes. Yet, we have far fewer. The human genome contains only 25,000 genes, so apparently around 100k less, or just too little quite. So there must be other aspects that determine our biology. Rather than genes deciding our destiny, it has been discovered that our environment also plays a key role. But now, and these are my thoughts once again, I am very interested in whether they think about the environment as parents and stuff, or where you're living, whether you're living in Africa, whether you're living in Europe, whether you're living in this place, in that place, whether you are living in nature, whether you're living in the city, whether you're living in the rural areas, whether you're living, maybe on the water as well, like whether there is water, whether there's mountains, what the nature is looking like. I do believe that in terms of the environment, there's many factors that could play into, if just this is the truth, that could play into the biology or our biology. Inside our cells, we have a series of regulatory proteins which surround the DNA in the nucleus. These proteins react with signals from the environment to help determine the destiny of the cell. They do this by only allowing certain codes of DNA to become activated. To illustrate this, imagine someone has a gene which makes them more likely to develop a certain disease, such as Parkinson's disease. Even though they possess this particular gene, however, it doesn't mean they will develop this disease. Instead, it depends on whether the regulatory proteins allow the gene to be activated. So inside our cells, we have a series of regulatory proteins which surround the DNA in the nucleus. These proteins react with signals from the environment. So which means that in the end, apparently, everything is kind of regulated by the environment as they stated, at least. So just to summarize that a bit. So our cells actually become hinges on the environment, which means that a more deterministic or Darwinian view is far from the truth. The biology of belief key idea 4. Theories in medical science are outdated, and this puts us in danger. You might be surprised to learn that illnesses caused by medical treatments are one of the biggest causes of death in the Western world. In the United States in 2003, illnesses stemming from medical treatments were in fact the number one killer. So why is this happening? The answer can be found in the world of physics. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was a radical change in our understanding of physics. Apparently, the old Newtonian view that determined the linear relationships between cause and effect A always leads to B, which always leads to C, was replaced with Einstein's theory of a complex web of interactions between energy and matter. A sometimes leads to B, but it can also lead to C. Unlike physics, however, biology is still based on outmoded principles from the Newtonian world. For example, once the likely cause of an illness is identified, the treatment provided for it stays the same. For example, once the likely cause of an illness is identified, do they mean like the likeliness that something is going to happen? The treatment provided for it stays the same. However, experiments have shown that the organisms also work according to Einstein's notion of a more interactive process. For example, by observing the cells of a fruit fly, scientists have discovered that the reactions between proteins are not linear, but rather a series of interlinking interactions or reactions. And these reactions can have a domino effect. Picture the relationship here as a complex web. Tweak one area and another area is also going to change. Moreover, some areas will be more affected than others. The more you push one way or one side of the web, the more it is also going to be just bent. But of course, other areas are also going to be bent, but still not as much as this area where you're bending or initially giving the force to or whatever. So this could be an explanation as to why so many people suffer side effects from medical treatment, as the same treatment can't always meet the unique needs of every individual. Therefore, which I do have to say, I mean, we don't have to be scientists to know that and see that, we all are individuals. Of course, certain diseases have certain outcomes and certain diseases have certain symptoms and certain diseases have certain symptoms in many people. But still, we all are reacting to things in various different ways. So yeah, I mean, medicine per se and drugs per se and pills per se and whatnot, they are based on the optimal, quite individual, I would say. Another thing is, of course, they have studied it and they have tried it out and they have tested it and whatnot, which means that, yes, it works for just the majority of the population, probably in somehow the same way. Probably not necessarily the exact same way, since we all are so different. We all are unique, quite, unless you're having a just twin or something. But still, it just really does make sense. It really does. Of course, they have been able to mitigate the quote-unquote risks, or they have been able to mitigate the maybe outbreaks, if you will, of bad outcomes. But still, we also see them, with people that are having allergies and just whatnot. Therefore, it would be advantageous for biological science to look at alternative treatments such as acupuncture as one example, instead of using the same treatments for everyone. However, the power of pharmaceutical companies means that, at least for the moment, we are stuck with potentially harmful pills. I mean, I do want to point out they have been tested and stuff and whatnot, but of course, there is going to be side effects quite always. It obviously depends on what you're taking, so I do not want to say that there are always going to be side effects and whatnot. But yeah, I'm going to highlight the whole thing there because I'm going to end the episode there. Maybe the other one is going to actually also be about that. Well, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, anyway. I wish you best health, happiness, and all success, and also hope that you're going to remind yourself and you're going to be remembered, which basically means your legacy, and basically means just being a nice person and then being remembered as a nice person, which is a pretty fucking cool thing. 3 other questions that I have you are, why are you here? What are you trying to change and what is bothering you the most? These 3 questions are hopefully going to show you your purpose and maybe even a business idea, which is pretty fucking cool. One other question that I have you is, or more or less thought is, what could you in particular say to another person is gonna change their life? Because I believe we all can say something, and I believe that we all can make some change, in other people and obviously also in ourselves, but just by saying things, just by giving a compliment, just by being nice, just by saying something that nobody else is saying. And a lot of people are not saying anything, nothing at all, even though they are thinking about things. They think okay, well, this guy is actually looking pretty cool, I like his glasses. But they would never ever go up to this person and be like, well, I really like your glasses. And I do not necessarily want to say that you should be going to strangers and give them compliments. Like, this is not like intentionally what I just wanted to do. But, we all have friends and we all have people, at least people around us, not necessarily friends, but people around us. And we can be nice and we can point out things that nobody has pointed out yet. And we can tell them things. So, yeah. With that being said, please stay safe and healthy, and and I do also hope that you are at this point of time healthy and safe, and that your family is gonna stay healthy and safe and is healthy and safe. But yeah, gonna see you the next time. So bye, and have a nice day. And thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.